proponents or the old creation science proponents wanted to present their ideas to the scientific community, argue them in the professional meetings, argue them in the journals, argue them in the body of scholars, and try to convince them that, in the case of intelligent design, something like irreducible complexity or complex specified information, these other buzzwords that they use, are really legitimate ways of explaining biology. They have that opportunity. Science is open to new ideas. If somebody can come up with an idea that really shakes the idea of common ancestry, that'll be fabulous. We'll have a whole bunch of new research to do. It'll be really, really exciting. Evolution isn't a belief. It just happens to be a really well-demonstrated science, which is why it's taught at the university level and why it's taught at the high school level. And until the intelligent design people are able to make their case that they have a valid science, they don't deserve to be taught at the high school level.
Yet this allows your critics to portray you as opponents of academic freedom.
Exactly. Yeah, it's an extremely clever strategy. If you don't have the science, go for the culture. They don't have the valid science, so instead they're arguing on American cultural standards of fairness and academic freedom, and we'll just let both sides be heard, or let all sides be heard. Well, you know, we don't present that in a history class that Lee surrendered to Grant and Grant surrendered to Lee and let the kids decide. We just teach them straightforward history.
I was going to turn to you with regards to intelligent design. As I went from my young Earth creationist phase, I was loosely attached to these guys back in the mid-early 90s. Phil Johnson, Mike Behe, Bill Dembski, Steve Meyer. And I might add, some people will say they're charlatans and such. I will defend these guys. They are true believers. They're genuine spirits. I don't agree with where they end up. But the one thing that I've seen with this group, and Eugenie is absolutely right, science starts with certain ideas that are outside the pale. Fair enough. But they've had 15 years now to present the intelligent design theory, and I'm still waiting for that theory to come forward. At that 94 meeting, it was in Cambridge at the C.S. Lewis Summer Institute. It was a who's who in science and religion. It still remains the best two-week conference I've ever been to. I always remember William Lane Craig, who's an evangelical philosopher and theologian, one of this country's and the world's leading apologists, asking Michael Behe, this is 94, so Black Box came out in 96. And Bill said to Mike 3 times, well, if it's not evolution, what's the theory? If it's not evolution, what's the theory? If it's not evolution, what's the theory? And 3 times Mike didn't provide a theory. So I'm still waiting to find out what's the theory. Now we hear a lot of things like irreducible complexity and the famed flagellum and things like that. But is that indeed the theory? Are you telling me that we need this divine intervention with regards to the first cell? If that's the theory, then put it in print and let's debate it. But it's not there and it's not clear. Now, as a theory, and I will defend these guys as a possibility, let's say there is that one event that God put the cell all together, from there everything evolved, which, by the way, interestingly, is Michael Behe's theory. Michael Behe's an evolutionist except for that first cell in Darwin's black box. And if that indeed is the case, that is what is called the God of the gaps. And we have a track record of people proposing divine events to account for things. For missing information. And what happens is science goes on, that information gets found, and the gap gets closed. Now, if ID and the first cell is true, this is what we're going to find from biochemistry. The next generation of biochemists will say, there's no way molecules could self-organize into the cells. Then the next generation after that, you see, instead of the gap closing, the gap's going to widen and widen and widen. I'm waiting to see the gap widening. And what's happening to evolution in terms of, ask any good molecular biologist. Have we figured out how molecules turn into cells? Oh, goodness gracious, we're a long ways away from that. But have we figured out bits and pieces and parts of it? We have. And when it comes to this famed flagellum, we have bits and pieces of how that came about. So my concern with intelligent design theory is, number one, it's really not out there clearly, and number two, it's a God of the gaps, and we have a historical record the gaps have always closed.
Denis, about the flagellum, we have more than bits and pieces.
Okay, correct me on
The
that.
evolution of the flagellum has reconstructed in great detail all the genes that were involved. First of all, there is not such a thing as the bacterial flagellum,
Right.
because each bacteria had different forms of flagella that serve different purposes. But in general, and for all of them, has been reconstructed gene by gene, duplication of gene, interaction between genes, going down to the present-day flagella. So this has been done originally in two very profound papers, one published in the magazine not known as Nature, the other one in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and afterward this evidence and arguments have been repeated and clarified in many ways for the general public. So actually all the examples used by Michael Behe, who's a bona fide biologist, as has been pointed out, he's not really an evolutionist, he's a biochemist, but all the examples that he uses in that book, some of them, the evolutionary history was already known in detail. He didn't know it. And the other cases have been reconstructed completely. So he does not use any longer those examples. In my way of looking at this matter, first what you were saying about why don't we want to teach alternative theories? My response to that is, our children, our young people receive a very poor education in science. The last thing we can afford to do, is to teach them something which is not science as science. And to make the point, I ask people, would you want them to teach alchemy together with chemistry, and astrology together with astronomy, and witchcraft together with medicine? Obviously not. We want to teach, as Eugenie was saying, the scientific consensus. And I will go further with respect to evolution. Being an evolutionist, of course, I'm passionate about the theory. There is no scientific theory at present that is as well corroborated as the theory of evolution, because it has happened that as various disciplines of biology have come about, things like neurobiology, what is called Evo-Devo, evolution and development, and particularly molecular biology, these disciplines were not looking for evidence for evolution, but are providing the strongest evidence for evolution. And so we are in a situation where, challenging now the theory of evolution as a scientific theory makes no sense. If somebody comes with an idea that would make sense, as Eugenie says...
well, let me just try one more shot at this, and that is that the critics, the creationists, and the anti-evolutionists say, wait a minute, you don't let us speak at your colleges. You don't let us write in your publications. Wrong. You exclude us.
Wrong. Okay. We do. The thing about the academic life, and I'm an ex-college professor, I'm a former president of a professional scientific society. I know how these things work. Most associations of scientists have meetings. At those meetings, they're pretty free-form. You can present a poster or a paper if you can write a coherent abstract. In physical anthropology, we actually have one or two individuals who come to our physical anthropology meetings and present papers on Bigfoot. Now, Bigfoot is not a real popular topic among physical anthropologists. You're not going to find but he can write a coherent abstract. He has ideas about footprints or fingerprints or something. He can present these papers. He can try to draw around him a group of people who would be willing to do research on this topic, and maybe he can build a movement. This intelligent design people can go to their biochemistry meetings and their molecular biology meetings and their information theory meetings or whatever. They can go to their professional associations. They can present their ideas. When you present your ideas are going to get shot down by your opponents. I mean, sometimes when I'm at a campus, I'll say, raise your hand if you've ever submitted a paper for publication. A whole bunch of papers go up. A whole bunch of hands go up. Keep your hand up if all of your papers have been accepted. And there's a big, roar of laughter, and all the hands go down. Nobody promises you a rose garden. The field of scholarship is not easy. You actually have to have something substantial to say. You have to support it, and you have to fight for your ideas. The intelligent design folks have the right to do that. They are not. Instead, they're going to the op-eds and they're going to the school boards.
I want to take that even one step further. if any scientist or any person who knows science would develop a